Hi all, welcome to Anil Nair Classes YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for your tremendous response on CAT 2020 informative videos. Now, in my previous videos, I spoke about Quant and LRDI, right? There are a lot of students who asked about, sir, can you please help out with RC passages, what needs to be done. Instead of telling you what needs to be done, I will tell you what you should not do it. RC, it is a very, very important part of VA and RC section, which comes in section number 1. Almost out of 34 questions, 24 questions are from RC and 10 questions are from verbal ability, where there were no questions on grammar and vocabulary. 24 questions out of 34 questions last year are from RC. 24 out of 34. If I approximate it to 25 by 35, 5 5s are, 5 7s are, almost 70% of the verbal ability RC section is from reading comprehension passage. Students who love reading, who are into an extensive reading from diversified topic will definitely have an advantage in this section. So all these key points are purely from an experiential point of view, right? Please ensure that each and every point is taken very, very seriously. Solving RC passage is more or less equivalent to solving a quant question. In a quant question, there are few questions where we use answer options. In an RC passage, there are few questions where we will attack the question by using the answer options, right? In a few question, in quant question, there are few questions where you have to read the question, understand the question and solve it step by step. In RC also it is like that. 8 things what not to do with RC passages. Let us go step by step. The first thing, right, RC passages are very tricky passages. Some questions will be, what do you think is the mood of the author while writing the passage? Very time consuming, right? Very energy sapping and very high on information intensive. But the best thing is the rewards you get in solving RC passages every day is 24 questions out of 34 questions. Even if you get 80% of the 24 questions right, almost 21 questions right, and get another 3 right from verbal ability, you are almost in the 99.5 plus percentile range. Extremely important section. You just cannot neglect the subsection in VA and RC, because in the other subsection only 10 questions will come. In case if you follow all these guidelines, you will be able to solve a good number of questions, right? And the best part about RC passages is, suppose if you know the hack behind solving an RC question, with understanding of that caselet, you will be answering most of the questions right at a single glance, similar to a DI caselet. Keep these below things in your mind and do not probably do a lot of mistakes because of not having a strategy in place. One by one we will discuss. What is the first strategy? Never ever be lazy in reading an RC passage. Most of the students, by looking at the length of the RC passage, they will say no to the passage, even though the questions in that passage are extremely simple and some of the questions are very factual questions. Just by looking at the length of the passage, they don't feel like reading it. So reading a passage should not be proportional to the length of the passage, may be proportional to your area of interest, but not probably proportional to the length of the passage. Never ever be lazy in reading the entire passage. There are certain previous year CAT papers reading comprehension questions where only if you read the passage you will be able to answer the question. Not all the questions can be solved by using answer options. Probably what you can do is you can work hard in the month of August, September and October and enhance the reading speed of your passage. Once you increase the reading speed of your passage, then the time taken to read a passage will be minimal. Ensure that, please don't be lazy, right? In a quant question, probably it will be there in a maximum 1 line, maximum 2 lines or a minimum 1 line. So just by looking at a question, you are probably, I will span the entire from the start of the question to an end of the question. But here in RC passage, it is not like that. Don't be lazy. Every day go through a newspaper reading. Every day ensure that if you are not good in verbal ability, ensure that you read it, and you are not reading it just for the sake of getting a good CAT score, right? All the great leaders are great readers. Ensure that reading becomes a part of your life. So the first thing which a student should not be doing is, don't be lazy in reading an RC passage. And the problem is, if you are lazy and you have not read the question properly, probably you will get into a negative mark range. This also happens with a quant question. You have not read the question properly. You have taken that x is a natural number, but in the question it is given that x is a whole number and the value 0, you ignored it. Instead of getting +3, you got -1. The net effect is -4. So these, never be lazy, not only shoots for an RC passage, but also shoots for all the 3 sections and all the 3 subsections of the CAT paper. I hope it is clear. Never be lazy in reading the passage. And the next thing is, always remember, in an RC passage of 24 questions, probably a 3 to 5 questions can be solved by using answer options. If generally what happens is, students will read the question, they will see the answer option, and they will go back and see where that context is there in that passage. Probably that kind of using answer options may work for 10 to 20% of the questions, but 80% of the questions that were coming from an RC passage in the previous year CAT papers, you are expected to read the passage. What will happen sometimes when you don't read the passage, when you are switching from one section to another section, there might be some but, if, then, however, these kind of words which will change the tone of the author also. Always read the passage before answering the questions. 80% of the questions in RC passage, you have to read the passage, then only you will be able to understand it. But kindly do not read the options before you read the passage. That might result in a disaster for you. 3 options are incorrect, and you do not want to load yourself with incorrect information before reading a passage. You saw a passage. First of all, you felt lazy by reading that passage. You thought of attacking it by using answer option. You went into an RC passage. Option number 1, you went and scanned it. It is not working. Option number 2, it is not working. Option number 3, it is not working. 3x times you are going back and reading the passage. Instead of it, 1x time you can read the passage and go out and tick mark the answer option. I hope I am making sense to you. In case if you want a factual information, go through the previous year CAT papers and try to solve the previous year RC passages using answer options. Probably not more than 20% of the questions in RC, you can solve it by using answer option. I hope it is clear. Kindly check yourself by going through the previous year CAT papers. Of course, 20% of the questions, more or less 4 to 6 questions, there is a good probability that you will get it. Suppose there is a factual information. When was the first battle of Panipat conducted? You can probably go back and search where that answers are in data, 1526, 1648, 1761 and 1931. You can go back and see where that 1526 is present. Any factual information related questions, probably you can go back to the passage and see where that numerical values are there. Numerical values, as Shakuntala Devi says, numerical values, right, are very easy to capture, unlike an alphabets which are very confusing at times. So focus only on that question. Some factual information related questions, 20% of the questions can be solved. Inferential based questions may or may not be. For 20% of the questions, do not read the questions first. Do not think that rule number 2 and rule number 3 are oxymoron statements. Rule number 2 is for the 80% of the questions. Rule number 3 is for the, whenever you can solve that data driven questions by using answer options, there is no need to read that question. But this definition holds good for a particular set of questions only. I hope it is clear. Next one. Generally what will happen is, whenever you are reading a passage, suppose one difficult word is there, do not try to sit over that difficult word. Learn to move on in life, not only in RC passage but also in your life. One difficulty, one challenge happened, move on in life. Don't worry about the past. Past is a cancelled check, tomorrow an uncertain promissory note, and today the ready cash. One of the biggest hurdles for a student while attempting an RC passage is, when you see an unfamiliar word, you will try to spend more time on that word. Unnecessarily it will complicate your life, and it will probably worse your examination preparation. Suppose you are watching a movie, there is one episode you have not understood it. Suppose, for example, take the example of an Andhadhun movie, right? Very beautifully connecting the dots will happen, right? Suppose take the example of any of the suspense thrillers. Initially you will not understand why that character was introduced and why this episode is built at the beginning of that, but in the second half you will go back and understand it. Try to move on in life. Don't spend too much time on an difficult word. You will understand the contextual meaning of it as you go right into the next passages. I hope it is clear. Never ever get stuck on a difficult word. Simply move on. And this also holds good for a quant question. So generally what will happen is, ego comes forward for an engineering student. I got 100 out of 100 in 10th. I got good rank and I am studying in a top engineering college. I was the best in mathematics. Why this problem is creating trouble to me? You are trying to win over the problem. You might win over the problem, but you will lose the exam. Try to win the exam and lose over a problem. It is okay. A winner is also someone who knows what to leave and when to leave and where to leave. I hope this rule number 4 is very clear to you, right? And always remember, some of my students keep telling that, sir, this answer is coming from outside of the passage. Please remember, even in an inferential based passage, if you go through the previous year CAT papers, especially from 1990 to 2008, there is no answer option that is derived outside the passage. In the passage only there are certain lines which will give you an understanding about the inference of the passage. Always remember, what is out of scope, it is never the answer. You restrict yourself to an RC passage and try to draw a conclusion. For example, this also holds good in data interpretation and logical reasoning. Strictly there are no assumptions. For example, if I say number of deaths outside Anil Nair classes is high, that also means multiple things. Number of natural deaths should probably is very high. Number of accidental deaths should be high. Or probably a good number of people last wish is to die in front of office. So probably don't take any assumptions. What is given in the passage, read the passage, understand the passage, and restrict your knowledge only to that passage and try to solve the questions in that passage. Always remember, right? Never think that the correct option would come from outside the passage. It will be present inside the passage. Don't carry forward your 21 or 23 years of intelligence and don't try to think out of the box unless and until it is required. Always answer is confined to the passage. Rule number 5. Rule number 6. Do not spend too much time on reading comprehension that you cannot comprehend at first. I will correlate with a quant question. There are few quant questions which you will not understand what to start from. Even in a data interpretation question, should I take, especially in a matrix based arrangement or a seating based arrangement, should I take chairs first? Should I take this person first? Should I take the seat number first? Right? If you are not understanding in the first inning, first innings you are not able to comprehend the passage, right? At that point of a time, probably do not spend time on it. Always remember 24 questions are there, and probably if you can attack 18 questions and get all of them right and get another 4 to 5 right in a verbal ability, you are almost at the 99 plus percentile range. Do not spend too much time on something which does not add value to your score, right? Now always remember, if you are struggling with one such passage, you read it for probably for 45 seconds, you are not able to understand the gist of it. You are not someone who is more into an poem based passages and you are not able to understand it. You are someone who is not into a particular writing thing. Suppose for example you are not into fictional books and the passage is talking about something which it is not comfortable for you, that's okay. Learn to move on in life. Go back to the tricky passage only in the case of an absolute necessity. I told you in my previous CAT strategy videos, you will always attempt a section in 2 innings. The first innings questions are the questions which are easy to solve and takes less time to solve in an RC. Second innings are the questions that you will solve which probably are not easy to solve, but your gut feeling says that I can solve it. Just 1 minute, sir. Don't spend too much time on RC passage, which probably is a little difficult. And this is one thing where most of the students emphasize on. Do not emphasize on a simpler things like an examples, illustrations, and so on. What you need to do is just to take the statement, okay, one example it is given. Suppose A into B equivalent to K. You don't need to go to length into breadth is area of a rectangle, price into consumption is expenditure, men into days is work, speed into time is the distance. You don't need to take so many examples. Just one example is enough for you to understand it, and do not spend too much time. Do not be obsessed with so many examples for a particular context. Just hang on with the main point and not with the examples. Examples are, the author is trying to explain the point by giving as many examples as possible. If you are able to understand it with one example, that's okay. Move on, right? That passage, that statements in the passage are redundant for you. Rule number 7. Do not overemphasize on trivial things. Rule number 8. See, this is what will happen if you probably do not read the passage. There are some trigger words, like for example, but, however, and everything. In case if you are solving a question by using answer options, probably you will not be able to understand in detail what is the mood, what the author is trying to say and what the author is trying to contradict also. These trigger words are extremely important to you, and trigger words, right? If you do not read attentively throughout the passage, probably the author is trying to focus on one point for a while and then changing it to another point with a trigger words. This generally will confuse the readers who skim through the passage and rush it through it. Have patience, read the entire passage, understand the various points the author is trying to convey with data and everything. Generally, some people will say that read the first line, read the last line, read the first line, read the last line. Probably what if the trigger words are there in the middle of the passage? Keep a special eye on trigger words. Keep a special eye on trigger words. These rule number 8. Rule number 7. Do not emphasize on trivial things, that is examples. If something is difficult to you in the first time, do not spend too much time on it. Rule number 5. Confine yourself to a passage. All the answers are coming from the passage. If there is a difficult word, simply move on. Do not read the question first for a 20 percentage of fact driven question. For an inferential based questions which 80 percentage of the questions are read the entire passage, right? Don't be lazy. I hope these 8 key points will be of immense help to you while attempting an RC passage. In case if you want to learn an RC passage from a Stanford University alumni and you want to go through the CAT 2020 course where we give close to 650 plus hours of video content, massive content, detailed example content, you can always WhatsApp our official number 8050067891 to know in detail about the course. Thanks a lot for watching this